has worked in MBES College of Engineering, Ambejogai from 1996 to 2017, where he was a professor and dean for PG department from 2010 to 2017. He has also worked in HIT Nirasoshi as professor and head in ECE department from 2017 to 2020. Here are a few achievements and recognitions. He has published more than 10 papers in referred journals like IEEE. He has guided 39 PG projects and more than 20 UG projects. He is working as a review committee member of IEEE, AWPL Journal, Progress in Electromagnetic Journal, Elsewhere Journals, Indian Journal of Radio and Space Physics, and also Asia Pacific Microwave Conference in 2008. He was a chief superintendent in HIT Center for GATE 2019 and Comet Key 2019 exam. He has fetched rupees 20 lakhs project grants from BGST, Government of Karnataka. We are pleased to have you with us today, sir. Thank you. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, madam. Good morning, one and all. So, I thank you very much for VVC for inviting me to this webinar and giving me an opportunity. So, I start my presentation. Let me share the contents. Am I audible? Can anyone tell me, am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You are audible, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Audible.
Yeah, the topic assigned to me is research trends in antennas and propagation. And I would like to clarify a few things before starting my presentation. This presentation is useful for those who would like to enter into the research field of antennas and propagation, or having little bit knowledge about the antennas and propagation. But the one who is very expert may not find that much benefit of it. So with this, I start my presentation. So is this screen visible to you? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. The overview of today's presentation includes the introduction about the antennas and propagation. In that, what are the prerequisites for one who wants to carry out research in the antennas and propagation. And after that, we look at antenna basics and terminologies, and then we go for planar antennas. Why one is most interested in the research of planar antennas? Why people are not interested in the traditional antennas? Then what are the softwares required? If one, this is the basic question usually everyone will ask. So which are the softwares available? And so what is the hardware requirement to carry out the antenna research? If you do a lot of simulations and you want to publish any work, so nobody usually recognize your work until and unless you just realize this work with the help of hardware testing. So we look at hardware requirements, and then I just explain you. So what are the steps involved in the antenna design and its optimization? Just I take example. I just don't get into the what exactly the interpretation of that particular design, but I would like to explain what are the steps involved in the antenna design and optimization. Then coming to the antenna research areas, if one is interested, what are the different areas in the antenna research? That include few, just I mentioned only few. There are n number of research areas in the antenna. One includes bandwidth, because this is the most precious in communication, everybody knows. Then gain of the antenna. Most of the times we design a very good antenna, but so it suffers from the gain. So this is one limitation of the antenna, where you can carry out your research. Then axial ratio, because most of the communication antennas are usually you need a circular polarization. In that case, the parameter that is to be tested is axial ratio. Then beam steering, nowadays everybody talks about the smart antenna and beam steering, because most of the wireless mobile communication equipments. So usually we carry the cell phone in our pocket. So if the base tower radiates the signal in all direction, most of the energy goes as a waste. In that case, if the beam is steered at the particular the cell phone, then we can save the energy and we can increase the bit error rate performance. Then the other topic is miniaturization. Nowadays, everybody is interested. So try to reduce the size of the communication device, and so that it not only is comfortable but also saves a lot of power, also power requirement. That is also called as compact. And the next is micro machining. When this slide comes, I just tell you what exactly the micro machining is. For the time being, micro machining antennas. So this is a major thrust area in antennas and propagation. Then artificial materials. Few people use artificial materials to realize the antenna, wherein people go for negative reflection index materials. And electromagnetic band gap structures are also used for the realization of antennas. Then these are the general research areas. When it comes to application based, a few people directly get into the applications. They don't get into the common research platform. Just they take particular application and then they carry out the research. Such things include uh, RFID, that is radio frequency identification, tags, then satellite antennas, mobile antennas, that includes cell phone as well as mobile towers. Then WLAN, everybody knows about IEEE 802.11 A to G. Then global positioning applications. Then comes rectennas. So it is one of the interesting topic in the antennas, rectenna. Then filtenas. Next is the filtenas. I just explained when the slide comes about the filtenas. Then the very hot topic now is antennas for IoTs. So we consider all these areas of research uh, at later stage. Then latest trends in antenna research, that includes, as I said, the MEMS or microsystem for antennas. Next is phased and switched arrays, microwave imaging for medical and military applications, RF energy harvesting and wireless power transmission, 5G antennas supporting adaptive beamforming and massive MIMO, then body wearable sensors, systems for on-body or off-body communication. Then next comes 60 gigahertz and terahertz applications. I just request the audience who are interested to carry out the research in antennas. These are the hot topics or current topics as of now. Then we will summarize at the end of the presentation. Then in the very first slide, you can see prerequisites. What knowledge the person should have to enter into the antenna research is electromagnetic waves, a little bit knowledge about the electromagnetic waves, and communication systems. Most of the people fear because when it comes to antenna, they think that it is full of electromagnetics, full of derivations, full of equations. That's why we don't want to get into the antenna. Not like that, only for the radiation patterns and for the radiation mechanism. So you should have the knowledge of electromagnetic waves, and then one should have the idea about the communication system. Without knowing the communication system, where exactly the antenna is used and for which application which antenna is required, then it is very difficult to carry out the antenna research. That is why prerequisites should have electromagnetic waves, know about this, and then communication systems. Electromagnetic waves. I don't explain the basics of this, but these are the electromagnetic waves. And we all know the properties of electromagnetic waves. The one of the best basic property is TEM, that is its transverse electromagnetic property. That is what exactly transverse electromagnetic. If E field, you can see the right figure, electromagnetic in the X direction, E signal, E field is in the X direction, and then H field is in the Y direction, wave is propagating in the Z direction. Whereas the first one, which is having motion, in that in the Z direction, one field is there, in the X direction, other field is there, wave is propagating in the Z direction. I request anyone having any doubt can ask me at any time, can interrupt any time. Then you should have the basic knowledge about the Maxwell's equations. Maxwell's equations are required while solving the boundary condition problems. You know, Maxwell formulated or consolidated the equations of various like Gauss law, Faraday's law, Ampere's law. In that, these are the four equations. The first equation is Gauss law, that is electric charge produces electric field. And second equation, del cross H, Gauss law for magnetism. And then the Faraday law, time varying magnetic field produces electric field. And the last one is Ampere's law, that is steady currents and time varying electric fields. That is what del cross H equal to j omega d plus j. In short, we can say that the total current is conduction current and displacement current. That is what we consider when the capacitors are connected in the circuit. Then the next is communication system. We are all electronics and communication engineers. We know what exactly the communication system is, but for the antenna researchers, what are the blocks, what is the how it works, it doesn't matter. For antenna researchers, the basic point is what is the distance between transmitter and receiver, then what medium is we are using, then maximum power requirement, type of wireless device, whether it is short range, long range, at what frequency it is operating, whether it is operating medium frequency, high frequency, VHF, UHF, or microwave, etc. Why these things are required? These things only decide what type of antenna has to be used. Then one should have the knowledge about the RF bands for wireless application. These are the IEEE bands. Basically, you can see the red arrow downwards, that is called RF, and then the dotted line you can see that is microwave bands. And now the research is going concentrating. So researchers concentrating on millimeter, that is 30 gigahertz to 300 gigahertz, and sub-millimeter waves greater than 300 gigahertz. Then next comes planar antennas. We know two types of antennas. One is the conventional 3D antenna that everybody has seen, like dish antenna, conical antenna, etc. But all mobile devices carry planar antennas. Then one should ask why planar antennas. It's just because of low profile. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Planar antennas, the basic reason of using planar antenna, planar means two-dimensional. Basically low profile and can even be conformal. So if you want to print antenna on the curved surface, then it is possible easily and easy to fabricate. That is using use of etching and photolithography, and easy to feed. So we have a lot of feeding techniques like coaxial cable, microstrip line, CPW line, etc. And easy to use in array. That is to enhance the performance of the antenna. Most of the people in most of the application use arrays. In that case, this is easy to use and can be easily integrated with MIC. That is, antenna can be incorporated into the integrated system. So one diagram is given here. You can see the microstrip patch antenna integrated with the system MIC. Then to carry out or to start the antenna research, there are n number of terminologies, n number of terms involved in the antennas, but among them, so a few are very important. That is, one should have fair knowledge about them. They are radiation mechanism, how the antenna radiates. That is what radiation mechanism. The second basic parameters include impedance matching, return loss, VSWR bandwidth, then gain, axial ratio, axial bandwidth, radiation patterns. In radiation patterns, you should know about what is E plane, that includes co and cross polarizations, H plane, co and cross polarizations. Radiation mechanism. So usually the person who wants to do antenna research should have the fair knowledge about radiation mechanism. How exactly the metallic surfaces or metallic structures radiate the energy. Usually we use moving charges always radiate the energy when they encounter any rough surfaces or curved surfaces, and the basic knowledge that one should have. Then in the basic parameter, the very most important parameter is impedance matching. It does not matter what type of antenna you are designing, what type of communication device you are using. Impedance matching is the most important term, because without impedance matching, you cannot connect antenna to the communication device. It could be transmitter or it could be receiver side. Then comes return loss and VSWR bandwidth. It is also associated with impedance matching only. And just I wanted to tell you the values of VSWR. I hope the audience is having the knowledge about the VSWR and return loss. VSWR less than 2 is being considered as the good for the antenna design. Like that, when you consider the return loss, its equivalent less than 2 is minus 10 dB. Any return loss less than minus 10 dB is good for antenna. Less than minus 10 means it can be minus 15, minus 20, and so on. Next is the gain. Gain is the very important parameter. So if it is for long distance communication, you should worry about the gain. And if it is for indoor communication, anything up to minus 20 dB I is okay. Then comes axial ratio or the axial ratio bandwidth. Axial ratio means it is used for the circular polarization. Usually the communication antenna are three types: linearly polarized, vertically polarized, and horizontally polarized in the linear case. And in the circular polarization, we have X component as well as Y component. If they are equal, it is called circular polarization. If X component is greater than or equal to greater than Y, or Y is greater than X, they are called elliptical patterns. So that parameter is measured by axial ratio, and it should be less than 3 dB anyway. Then comes the radiation patterns. I just show you when it comes, that slide comes about the radiation patterns. Then this is a typical S11 or return loss graph. In this, you can see we define bandwidth based on this figure only, bandwidth. It is the ratio of difference between the operating frequency and the that is operational frequency of the antenna to the central frequency or design frequency. This definition is used when bandwidth is less than 100%, and we take the ratio of two frequency, where FU is the upper cutoff frequency, FL is the lower cutoff frequency. For this, you may ask what is upper cutoff and what is lower cutoff. You can see here. So if we take minus 10 dB reference, this cuts the curve on left side, that is called FL. On right side, where it is cutting, is called FU. FU means upper cutoff frequency, FL is the lower cutoff frequency. When we take the difference, that is delta F, and F naught is the geometric mean, or some people take arithmetic mean of these two frequencies. Then that is F naught. So this frequency, when we take the ratio, multiply it by 100, we get bandwidth less than 100% or bandwidth greater than 100%. We use FU by FL is to 1. Then impedance bandwidth is also calculated with the help of VSWR. So when we consider VSWR, we should take the value less than 2 only. And one thing should be noted that VSWR cannot be less than 1. Minimum value of VSWR is 1. With the help of this equation, we can calculate the impedance bandwidth. Then, as I told you, VSWR bandwidth. If you want to calculate the bandwidth with the help of VSWR versus frequency curve, you can see this graph. Here VSWR2 line is there and 2:1 SWR points. Left side it is FL again, right side it is FH, and again, so we can calculate the bandwidth ratio just as I explained earlier. And center frequency is the geometric or arithmetic mean. Then talking to near field and far field, where exactly the receiver has to be kept, at least to receive the signal. And that is given by this diagram that can be calculated. So you can see I have identified just indicated with the 3 different color. One is you can say pink, the second is green, the last one is gray. The circle which covers the pink colored, so that is the near field, that is not considered as a radiation field. If you keep your receiver here, you won't get, or you won't be able to catch the signal. And in the green circle, if you keep the receiver, somehow the antenna will catch the signal, but the quality will not be that good because maximum power transfer doesn't take place. And any receiver which is beyond this green circle, that is called radiating field, that is called the far field, and that is calculated by 2 into d square by lambda, where d is the largest dimension of the radiating structure. Then radiation patterns. So there are various components of the radiation pattern. Right side figure you can see this is HPBW, that is half power beam width. That is the points where exactly the power becomes half of the radiated. Then this is FNPW, first null between the beam width. So here on left side and right side there are no beams, that is why this is called FNBW. And this is side lobe, you can see side lobe here. And then in the first diagram, again you can find major lobe, and the bottom one is back lobe, and here also HPBW is indicated. So these are the parameters that are to be calculated during the research. And the importance of HPBW is it should be sharper for the long distance communication, especially for radar applications. People prefer 5 to 6 degree. Then software requirements. Which are the softwares available? Which software has to be chosen? Before realizing the antenna, it has to be optimized to save the resource. Why EM software is required? Because directly by using any equation, if you design the antenna and if you start realizing, so you may not be able to get the exact optimized antenna. In that case, software helps you first design antenna and do some parametric study and get the optimized structure, then only go for final fabrication. And there are plenty of commercial EM softwares available, and a few are. One is Mentor Graphics. Earlier it was called as IE3D, and next is Ansoft's HFSS, is a high frequency structure simulator. Next is Empire Excel and Microwave Studio. There are other softwares are also, but as per my knowledge, if you ask me, I prefer IE3D is the first one, and if at all you have 3D structures, you go for HFSS. Then my suggestion is choose the suitable one which is available to you. And other software knowledge is that you should have any antenna researcher is MATLAB and for data handling, Microsoft Excel. Then hardware requirements. What are the hardware requirements? As I told you in the beginning, without realizing the antenna hardware realization, without having the measured results, you cannot tell or you cannot publish your work anywhere. So that's why hardware requirement is essential. You should have right or suitable PCB substrates for antennas. I just briefly tell you about the PCB substrate. The one which is used for regular application is not used, that is glass epoxy. Usually for antenna researchers, the substrate is identified with the permittivity or relative permittive constant, that is epsilon R. For antenna research, if it is very close to 1, that is the best substrate. And if it is far away from 1, then it's very difficult to handle the substrate. The typical value used by antenna researchers 2 to 4. Usually antenna researchers do not prefer above 4 because any value greater than 4 always introduces various losses. So that is why. So one thing should be kept in mind. The best value is 1 and any other value should be less than 4. Then antenna fabrication facilities should be there. That is what PCB etching. When you consider the very high frequency, like you are designing 10 gigahertz antenna, 15 gigahertz antenna, 20 gigahertz antenna, you cannot use the traditional PCB fabrication techniques. Even any change in the 1 or 0.1 millimeter, that also changes the operating frequency. That is why we should take care of that. Then we should have semiconductors for port connection. Then the next very important instrument that our device instrument should be there is network analyzer. Some people call it as PNA or VNA according to the application. Vector network analyzer. This is used for the S parameters. We all know any frequency greater than 1 gigahertz, we use S parameters rather than Z parameter, Y parameter, or H parameter. We use S parameter. To measure S parameter, we use the network analyzer. And then pattern measurement. Once you measure the S11, you'll come to know only the S parameter analysis like return loss and VSWR bandwidth. What about the radiation pattern? Radiation pattern can be measured with the help of anechoic chamber. This is just the picture. In pic, you can see the anechoic chamber where foam is used, carbon coated foam is used, which absorbs unwanted reflections. So that is why this anechoic chamber is used to measure the radiation patterns. Then antenna design. So the basic question is, if I start research now, then how to start? There are two ways. One is research oriented design, and the second is, as I told in the very beginning, application based design. And one thing should be kept in mind that the monopole, if you are using the monopole structure, it should be of length lambda by 4. And if it is dipole, it is misprinted. It should be lambda by 2. Dipole, it is lambda by 2, and monopole, it is lambda by 4. I take one example. I don't want to get into the exactly operation of this one. So here I showed one geometry which is designed for 6 gigahertz. 6 gigahertz. So this is research oriented, not the application oriented. Research oriented. You can see this is the suspended structure. The colored connector is called SMA connector, and the black strip. The bottom figure I'm explaining, this is radiating patch and feed strip. H is the height or thickness of the substrate, and G is the air gap or the suspension. Then the top view shows radiating patch, which is having W as the width and L as the length. And on right side, we have small strip that is having the dimension of S by T, and it is separated by the distance D. So this is one geometry. These are the dimensions. Exactly, I just tell you how exactly start designing it. So how to optimize? Without optimization, as I told you, you cannot go for realization. In that diagram, as I told you, in this diagram, area gap, these are the parameters. In this, you cannot change H, you cannot change L, you cannot change W. These are the fixed for are the given parameters for particular frequency. What you can change G, that is the air gap. Then distance between the larger patch and the small patch D. A small patch dimensions, that is thickness T, and length or height of the small strip S. That is what optimization parameter. That's what written here. You can see air gap G, separation between feed strip D, feed strip length T, feed strip width S. So, and one thing should be kept in mind, at a time we cannot vary all the parameters of the antenna, so we have to change only one parameter, keeping all other parameters constant, and from among the set of values that you obtain, you have to choose the best optimum. In this, you can see initially air gap is varied from 5 to 7.5, and the best is 6 one. The set with 1.6 and 2.8, you are getting 3.09. That is what plotted here. I just showed you S11 graph, and this is the very important graph. From this graph only, you calculate what is the bandwidth of your antenna. And to calculate the air gap, one equation is there usually for suspended antennas. This is 0.16 lambda c minus h into under root of epsilon r. And as I told you, so this is research based problem. That is why you can redesign it for L band, S band, C band, and X band with the different values. So these are the set of values for different parameters. Now, you can see this graph is called Smith chart. This is used to find the impedance matching of the particular antenna. Along x-axis, its value is indicated with resistance or resistive values. Upper half of the circle indicates positive reactance, that is inductive reactance, and the lower half indicates capacitive reactance. And you can find one circle with respect to center, that is called VSWR2 circle. Any curve of S11 lies in the circle indicates the operational bandwidth. So here you can observe what exactly you can observe from this. Say this is the parameter D. You can see right side. This is for the various or different D values. D value started from 0.1 to 2 mm. In that you can observe as the value D changes, the graph, that is the curve, shifts either left side or right side, not much above and below. That is why, so here this changes the resistive part of the input impedance. As I told you, left side and right side is the variation in the resistance. Top and bottom indicates the changes in the reactance. So I can tell you the other example. So here you can see by changing T, so here it is coming down, nothing but only reactance is changing. That is why the conclusion is it controls the reactive part of the input impedance. Like that, another parameter is yes, this also controls the reactive portion. So in general, what exactly we are doing, we are changing resistance, we are changing reactance, means we are changing the input impedance. So by changing the input impedance, we can match with respect to the communication equipment. Then one has to do to confirm their antenna is working fine. The dotted line you obtain from the simulation softwares. Usually you start with one particular frequency, you start the design, then you get some good result, you feel that you are happy with the result. Then next step is measurement. So as I told you, with the help of network analyzer, you measure the characteristics of the S parameters of the antenna. Then in the Excel or MATLAB, you just club both the curves, you get the comparison. You can see how best the two curves are matching. So you need not worry about the depth of the curve. You just think about where exactly both curves are starting below minus 10 dB and where exactly they are ending. So start frequency and end frequency. That is what the operational bandwidth. Then radiation patterns, as I told you. So one should able to interpret these radiation patterns. So these radiation patterns can be measured with the help of what are the requirements? Network analyzer is required and anechoic chamber is required. So we measure the radiation patterns with the help of anechoic chamber, and we get the values in the network analyzer. We extract the values with the help of some software. We plot these radiation patterns. These are the measured radiation patterns. You can see four colors here. One, you just forget about the boundary. Just one blue, red, green, and can. Red indicates E-plane copolarization. The blue indicates H-plane copolarization. I assume that audience know about E-plane and H-plane. These are the two principal planes where we measure the radiation patterns. Green and can are the not useful radiation patterns. They are called cross polarization. One is the E cross and other is the H cross. Where exactly we should where we need to consider these radiation patterns. Usually people consider that the antenna is radiating the signal in the 0 degree, that is called bore sight or bore sight angle. And if you look at the radiation pattern from 4.5 gigahertz to 7.5 gigahertz at three frequencies, these are plotted at bore sight or at 0 degree. The cross polarization level is important. At the cross polarization level should be below minus 15 dB. If it is above minus 15 dB, definitely it interferes with the copolarization, not only interference, and there will be huge loss of the radiation. So one, that is antenna researcher has to keep in mind that the copolarization level should match with the 0 dB. And cross polarization radiation patterns should be below minus 15 dB. These are the normalized patterns. These are called normalized patterns. Always the maximum value is 0 dB. Then next comes here, once you design the antenna and you obtain the measured results, and luckily measured results are exactly matching with the simulated results, and don't think that the research comes to end there only. So you need to understand the physical interpretation of the geometry, how exactly it radiated. So with what principle you got those results, that is to be explained. Especially you want to publish your work in IEEE transactions or Vale publications, Springer publications, elsewhere. So there you need to work a little bit hard, and you need to show extra analysis that you can carry out in the antenna analysis. So usually in general language, it is called mathematical modeling of antenna. In that, the geometry is shown. I just show you. There are three subparts in that. You can see the arrow mark. This is the patch, and then next is the gap, that is between larger patch and small patch, and the last one is feed strip, that is small patch, small strip, we can say, instead of saying patch. These are the three parameters that are to be modeled. Usually the gap is modeled by pi network. Usually there are n number of mathematical modeling techniques are there. You can go for even EM analysis also, like method of moments, FDTD methods. But the basic method is coaxial or transmission line model or cavity model. In cavity model, we consider the basically the transmission line terminated with proper impedance. That the patch is you refer any antenna textbook, you find patch as the combination of or parallel combination of C and L, and loss is indicated with resistive patch. So the diagram upper left is the patch equivalent, and the gap is indicated by pi model. Two parallel capacitors and one series capacitance. So you know the two metallic strips separated by dielectric is always indicates the capacitor. Like that, the separation between ground plane and the top is indicated by these two parallel plates. And then this is the feed strip. A feed strip is the coaxial probe is indicated by the inductance. And then after clubbing all these models, so you get the final or complete model. And this antenna, the basic antenna that I showed in the very beginning, okay, yeah, so that you saw in the very beginning about that antenna, that is equivalent to this circuit model. And when you calculate the input impedance with the help of this circuit model, we get Z is equal to this expression. We took three models: Z of patch, Z of feed strip, and Z of the gap. When you club all these things, you get this. And now the dotted line, earlier it was obtained, red line you obtained through measured, and now the last one is calculated using this expression. So now you can see the all three curves. Nothing but you understood the mathematical working of the antenna also. So this is what mathematical modeling. Usually not all publications include all these three. For publication purpose, the first and second in most of the publications are enough. Then next, usually people get into research is MEMS for antenna. The one question is, what is MEMS? MEMS is basically micro electromechanical system. Then it's the combination of electronic as well as mechanical components. Micro, as the name indicates, it is small. Small moving parts and electromechanical system. Then why MEMS? Is a very vast area, a broader area, and we restrict ourselves to RF MEMS, that is radio frequency, that is to communication only. Then you may ask, what is the significance of MEMS in the antenna design? Just I tell you the basic purpose of this. Usually communication device, say you take cell phone, is the combination of electronic components and antenna part. And you know, if anybody is expert in VLSI technology, usually for electronic component design. Hello, am I audible? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. For electronic design, we use silicon as the substrate. Silicon as the substrate for antenna purpose, for antenna design. I told you in the beginning, relative permittivity must be less than 4. So best value is 1. The question is, instead of using two different substrate, for electronic part silicon, that is permittivity is 11, and the second is for antenna design, we use the substrate whose permittivity is less than 4. we have to go for two substrate. And if you want to purchase a cell phone, that should have two PCBs, one PCB for electronic component and other PCB for antenna. So this is not a good practice. This is not a good design. And what to do? We have to use only one. Either the permittivity, so PCB with permittivity less than 4, which is not suitable for electronic component, or we use the silicon substrate that is not suitable for the antenna. So usually in research, since electronic component portion is the largest portion in the any design, so we usually go with the silicon substrate. Then, as I told you, silicon substrate is not suitable for antenna design. What to do? So we usually go for micro machining technique. That is, the micro machining is basically removing some part of the silicon below the PCB. What exactly happens if you remove? You can see the first diagram, hollow cavity you can find. So here, what exactly we have done? We have removed some portion of the silicon, and here you can find the air as the substrate. When you combine air and silicon combination, then the total or equivalent relative permittivity will be very close to 1, and this is called micro machining technique. Now both purposes will be served. Anyway, we are using silicon that is suitable for antenna, electronic circuit design. And since we removed part of the material, particularly where exactly you print the antenna, so there you removed silicon and permittivity is close to 1, then that is also suitable for antenna. We solved the problem. That is what micro machining. There are two types of micro machining. Left side you can see bulk micro machining, and right side you can see surface micro machining. With the help of bulk micro machining, we remove large portion of the substrate, that is for different application. And then on the right side, to have any or to design any components with the help of micro machining. I just show you some components. And what exactly is surface micro machining? You can see the process of surface micro machining. You take the silicon wafer. As I told you, silicon is the base material. Without silicon, no micro machining and no MEMS. Then deposit or grow silicon dioxide, red strip you can see, and that you just paste pattern of oxide using a mask deposit polysilicon, then pattern polysilicon, then remove the sacrifice layer. Sacrifice, why it is called sacrifice? At the end, this will be completely eliminated. That is a red strip. So you find the beam kind of structure, that is sacrificial layer process to make the released structures. Then bulk micro machining. Similarly, you can find the bulk micro machining process also. Again, the base material is silicon only. Then other components, if anyone interested in the RF MEMS research, micro switches, micro relays, and he can think of capacitors or inductors. These are not normal capacitor and inductor. These are the planar capacitors and planar inductors with the help of micro machining. Then is the resonators and filters, phase shifters. Then you can have research in the planar transmission lines also. All these components are useful to again change the beam or beam pattern of the antenna. One typical microsystem I have shown here. Here feed networks. This is having switches, delay lines. You know about the delay line. So this is delay nothing but to change the phase angle. If you change the phase angle, you can change the direction of the radiation pattern. With the help of novel materials, distributed transmission lines, these are the microsystems which are useful for the antennas. Then monolithic phased array antenna. So you can see the various antenna structures on top, and here with the help of CMOS controller, in the basic block diagram, RF source is there that is to be radiated. With the help of feed network and phase shifter and amplify the signal, finally connected to antenna, can change the radiation pattern. So the first leftmost is 0° reference and middle diagram. So you are tilting the beam towards left, and in the right side you are tilting towards the right. And please don't think that only 3 angles are possible. So just for reference purpose, 3 angles are shown. So you can change even at the 1 degree also, 0 to 90 degree plus side and 0 to minus 90 degree left side also. These are called steerable antennas. Then next is anyone interested in latest topics. The first is wireless energy harvesting. You know, the basic problem everybody faces is charging up the cell phone. Usually in some places you don't find a charger. Even if you have charger, you won't find the charging slot. In that case, wireless energy harvesting is the solution. In this, what we do, we use the radio waves. So when you take any space or area, that is filled with n number of radio waves, maybe from the television or from the cell phone or from any other communication equipment. So you get a lot of radio waves, and those waves are collected with the help of antenna. Then using the simple AC to DC converter, that is RF to DC converter, that is with the help of rectifier, we change the incoming electromagnetic signals into the DC component, again using the power supply unit, power control, and we just give it to the load, means either to charger or any storage battery. So this is one block. So you can see the in this box left top is antenna. Matching circuit is required because you don't get huge power. So the energy will be in terms of milli or even sometimes micro watt power. And matching circuit is required, and you also use a suitable diode. We don't use regular diodes here, so we use the pin diode kind of thing, RF to DC charge pump. Then so here embedded microcontroller unit that controls the and takes care of charging tank. So at the end you store the energy here that can be used for the future purpose. So this is called wireless energy harvesting, and in short it is called Rectena. So you find lot of literature when you Google it by the term Rectena. The simple Rectena nothing but combination of two words, rectifier antenna. So it includes the first part rectifier and the second is antenna. It uses antenna that, and since it uses the rectifier principle, so it is called Rectena. One typical available in literature I have shown you. Most of the stuff I have taken from the literature only. Typical example of Rectena. So you can see this diagram. So here is the antenna. Signal is coming from right to left. So this portion is antenna, right side. Right side it is antenna that is coupled to the rectifier unit, and finally two terminals are taken out for the storage purpose. And here you can see the voltage measurement. So this is for laboratory testing. So here this is the source of electromagnetic signal, and it is kept at 1 meter away, and that is caught with the help of Rectena, and that energy is converted into DC and it is measured in the voltmeter. So this is what the working principle of Rectena. Lot of scope is there for the Rectena, because nowadays most of the smartphones coming without wire charging unit. They use wireless charging. In that case, so Rectena plays important role. Then 5G antennas. If anybody interested, directly get into the 5G antenna. 5G antennas are just similar to 4G antennas, but their operating range is very less. 2% of the 4G range is about 1,000 feet only. For the 4G antenna, you can consider up to 1 kilometer or 800 meter, 1.5 kilometer. But here it's not in terms of kilometer; it is in terms of feet. 1,000 feet, 2%. So ensure reliable 5G signal. There needs to be a lot of 5G cells because it covers only 1,000 feet. Nothing but there should be a lot of base stations or even indoor stations also to cover the buildings. So ensure reliable 5G signal, lot of 5G cell towers and antenna everywhere. Then Again, some people talk about the 5G is dangerous. That is why some countries are banning the 5G. Uh, but some 5G experts contend that the new network generates radio frequency radiation that can damage the DNA and that lead to cancer, cause oxidative damage that can cause premature aging, disrupt cell metabolism, and potentially lead to other diseases through generation of stress points, proteins. But no proof, no medical proof available yet. And then next is filtena. So again, how exactly we interpreted the rectifier antenna, it is filtena. So this is filter plus antenna. And in one of the figure, I just said antenna is the patch is the parallel combination of RLC circuit. Where RLC is available, you can definitely design the filter. So here you can see photoconductive switches. So optical part is also included in this. And this is a combination of filter and antenna. So where exactly such type of antennas are used? These are used in the IoT applications, where exactly directly sensor can sense a signal and even interpret the signal. Then one can even start with 60 gigahertz antennas. 60 gigahertz, this is a special frequency, is already used in computer data networking to provide point-to-point links, such as between buildings on a corporate or college campus. 60 gigahertz mmW, that is millimeter wave systems, are amongst the safest RF communication system ever designed. Due to the combination of low power at 60 gigahertz, nothing but power must be low only, emission and high operation frequency. Gigalink can be safely installed in any location. And in addition to the very low power level, a 60 gigahertz system do not penetrate the human body. They are the safest for the human point of view. The minimal penetration of 60 gigahertz energy sets it apart from the debate that currently surround the safety of other RF communication system. Then terahertz antennas in the range of terahertz. So these are useful for the detection of concealed weapons. If any terrorist or any person, any dangerous person carrying the weapons and explosives, so with the help of terahertz antennas can be, so these are used to detect such type of weapons. Exposure and identification of biological and chemical weapons is also a major home related security concern. And terahertz is also used for imaging by virtue of its ability to penetrate the materials, and it is a short wavelength leading to high resolution terahertz spectroscopy due to its capability to recognize unique signatures of the dangerous biological and chemical agents, provide the most promising approach to address these problems. I just show some figures so that you can realize the application of terahertz. And so these are the scanners made from the terahertz antennas. So for what purpose use? Detection of hidden weapons and explosives, detecting non-metallic weapons, postal screening of envelope for bacteria, even microorganisms can be detected with the help of these devices, and for chemical and biodetection purpose. When you see this one, you can see the very first, that is left topmost. With the help of terahertz antenna, this fellow is scanned, and here you can find the gap. Everywhere you can find the color in the middle. So gap is there, that indicates some objects concealed under the cloths, which may be dangerous to human beings. So that is what objects concealed under cloths, and metallic sharpness like blades. So here you can find, and in the uh, right top, see how smart this gentleman looks, as if he is carrying some notes, but he is carrying knife here. So after scanning, you can find the knife wrapped in the newspaper. And here these people trying for robbery, and even sitting inside the home. With the help of these scanners, you can find that what weapons they are carrying, how many people are there, you can find here. So that is what the terahertz antennas are used for, the scanning such applications. Then Next is the antennas for IoT application. Everybody talks about IoT, Internet of Things everywhere nowadays. Everyone is interested in the IoT only. It does not matter what physical device is, should have the wireless connectivity. And day by day, wireless connections are increasing, and even more and more applications are coming. And accordingly, we need to design antennas also. And the IoT device itself is of mini scale. In that, you just think about the size of the antenna. Roughly speaking, when you take any communication equipment or communication device, the antenna portion must be hardly 5 to 10% area only. In that, you think IoT device itself is small, then what about the size of the antenna for such applications? And usually IoT antennas are called virtual antennas. So virtual antenna is the commercial name of antenna-less technology based on a new generation of tiny components named antenna boosters. Please remember, some people call IoT antennas as virtual antennas, and some people call this technology as antenna-less. Please don't misunderstand antenna-less. It means that it is not at all having antenna. Any antenna size whose dimension is less than 1/30th of the wavelength or even less than 1/50th of the wavelength, we can say that it is antenna-less. You may be remembering in school days while doing mathematical equations, solving mathematical problems, when one value is much smaller than other one, we used to neglect the other value, that is which is smaller. Like that, so here the size of the antenna is of micro scale. That is why it is also called as antenna-less technology, and some people call it as antenna booster. Antenna boosters are miniature, as I told you, very small size, and these are the SMT, that is surface mount of the cell phone. The very important thing is of the cell phone. So these are not included in the PCB of the electronic component, kept somewhere of the components that replace the conventional customized PFA. Usually our all cell phones carry PFA antenna only, that is planar inverted F antenna for mobile or wireless connectivity applications. As I told you, being much smaller than the operating wavelength, typically below 130 or even 150 of the wavelength and beyond, the antenna boosters provide full functional multi-band wireless connectivity to smartphones and even IoT devices, and seamlessly, and there is no boundary for this, seamlessly fit about any device from form, factor, and design. And moreover, because the antenna boosters take the form of chip antenna. So as I told you, these antennas are designed directly with the help of MEMS technology. The chip antenna, they can be assembled in production on the main printed circuit board of the mobile wireless device using a conventional pick and place machinery, resulting in a lower production cost and improved quality and reliability. Then the architecture of virtual antennas system typically includes one or more antenna boosters. In some applications, only one may not be enough because of its low power. Then antenna boosters required, a matching network, and a ground plane layer embedded into the main PCB of the mobile wireless device. And one thing is very important and very interesting is that once you design the antenna, if you change the application, you need not change the antenna again and again. The same antenna can be used for multiple applications. In that case, what exactly one has to do is you have to change the impedance matching network, not the antenna. Usually in traditional communication systems, you have to keep on changing the antenna as per the application. But in case of IoT devices, you need not change the antenna. You keep on changing the matching network based on the application. That is why while the antenna booster is off the shelf and can be used across a variety of mobile products, the matching network does need customization for every wireless or mobile device. Then by changing the matching network, the response of the antenna-less system can be adapted to cover multiple frequency bands required in a modern smartphone. One example is high-end smartphone featuring every band from LTE 700 to LTE long-term evolution, that is 5G 3700, might need a couple of boosters and 5 to 8 high Q components. Usually, we go for very high quality factor to restrict the operational bandwidth. You may be knowing the relation between Q and bandwidth. They are reciprocal. As the bandwidth increases, quality factor decreases, and as the quality factor increases, bandwidth decreases. And definitely, obviously, we use multiple applications. We should go for high quality components of the matching network to deliver always on full bandwidth, enabling the inter-band carrier generation. And a simpler IoT device would benefit of a simple matching network with typically 3 to 5 components. Still, the same antenna booster component might be used for both high-end smartphone as well as simple IoT device. As I told you, as the application changes, antenna doesn't change, only the booster or the coupling network has to be changed. And I just covered fair amount of device antenna types that can be considered for the research purpose. In addition to this, people also consider fractal antennas. If one is interested in the fractal antenna, can carry out the fractal antenna. They have got good features like you can have multiple repeated structures, multiple repeated characteristics. One can go for fractal geometry, but only the problem with fractal antennas is, so it's very difficult to go for mathematical modeling. That is why I suggest, if you are extremely having good commanding over the mathematics, then definitely you can consider the fractal antennas also. So with this, I just conclude my various topics on the antenna. And again, there are combinations of these geometries can be used to try different to get the different result. And one thing I would like to tell you that anyone who is doing the research, this is my suggestion. So usually most of the people just they take some literature paper and then simply they do delta X modification, and definitely they get some different results, maybe because of software or maybe because of the different arrangement of the geometries. They get some results. And usually when you go with reputed publications, they look for significant change in the results. Again, there are two types of things they observe. Either your technology is totally new. In that case, result may be anything, they accept it. Even, for example, so far people achieved bandwidth up to 100%. Let's assume one has designed bandwidth up to 100%, but you take totally a different thing with a different technique and you got only 10%. Since your area is totally new, even though you are getting only 10%, but nobody has done yet such type of work, then your work will be acceptable for the publisher. And the second thing is, as I told you already, the people achieved up to 100%, and with the same technology, with the same technique, you just get the 105% or 110%. Nobody is going to accept your work. Say in place of 100%, say you're getting 200% or 250%, or you have done significant changes to your geometry, then only your work is acceptable. So these things should be kept in mind while doing the research. Now, you can ask any questions if you have.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
Sir, there are some questions in the chat section. I
Yeah.
think your presentation has cleared most of the questions.
Yeah.
But there are some distinct questions we have. Can we take those questions, sir?
Sure, sure, sure.
So one question that can cadence tool be used for antenna design?
No, no. Cadence is exclusively for VLSI.
So on the so how to verify that the fabricated antenna is working properly?
Yeah, that's what I told you. You should have the network analyzer. You need to test the S parameter of the antenna. Then you go for radiation patterns. The values which you obtain from the software, so you just match with that. Once you are getting the close relation, if they are relatively matching or fairly matching, you can say that your antenna is working.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, what are the challenges in research of active integrated antennas?
Yeah, pardon?
What are the research challenges of active integrated antennas?
Yeah. It's a really good question. Very challenging one. You see, first of all, integrated technology. So usually when you go for fabrication, so in India, so it's only few places are having that type of testing centers. So the basic thing is testing only, not with the design. With the help of HFSS, you can do a lot of active integrated work, but only the thing is during measurement only.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. So we have one last question, sir.
Yeah.
Many of the researchers record VSWR is 2, that is 90%.
Yeah.
Can we still improve the VSWR furthermore practically?
Definitely. Some of the applications require VSWR less than 1.5 even. So that indicates more than 96%. So that is possible.
Thank you, sir. If participants have any questions, they
Sir,
can unmute
can you
yourself
hear
and
me,
you
sir?
can ask.
Yeah, you are audible.
Sir, my research is on active integrated antenna,
Okay.
and because of time constraint and difficulty in the integration technology, I am choosing on design of power amplifiers for antenna.
Right.
That too using the cadence tool.
Okay.
Sir, the thing is, yeah, as you said, the integration technology and the testing is very difficult in India. I too agree for that. So we have planned for only design and simulation and verification of S parameters, intermodulation products, layout and metal layer interconnection of this. Is it a right way of the research?
Yeah. I just try to clarify your doubt.
Okay.
It is with the publisher.
Mm.
Say, obviously, you are working for PhD means you just send your papers or manuscripts to the reputed publisher only.
Mm.
Reputed publisher never thinks that you don't have these facilities. He assumes
Yes.
that you have full facilities only. That is why you
Okay.
started your research, because they collect the manuscripts from the globe only, all over the world. So that is why usually there is a least chance of getting your paper selected uh, in reputed journals. So in such case, you yourself will not be satisfied with your publications only at the end. So that is why it's
Okay.
better to have
So
some
what best we
measurement.
can do for that, sir?
You just uh, you can contact some DRDO or LRD or even IASC also is the place where you can discuss regarding the measurement. So there
Hmm.
you may find some help.
Hmm.
Better to go LRD.
Means we have to fabricate it and we have,
That
okay, we have to fabricate it and we have to measure it.
yes. That's the right way.
Okay. Okay, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Hello, sir.
Hello. Yeah, please. Yeah, please.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good
Sir,
afternoon.
actually, there are various software used for antenna design and simulation.
Yeah.
So, out of which, so which is the best one, sir?
Yeah, that's why I told you.
Best
No?
software.
I have experience with those 4 softwares listed in the PPT. IE3D is the best one. As far as when you go for measurement, you get almost 99.9% accuracy. Only the thing is IE3D has got certain limitations. So you can't go for the complete 3D structure simulation. In that case, you can go for HFS. HFS is the second best.
Thank you, sir.
Uh, uh,
Sir, in America and also they are using 5G technology, 5G wireless communication.
Yeah,
But in India, we are using 4G and we are moving to 5G.
yeah.
What are the 5G antenna design challenges, sir? As of now, infrastructure with respect to.
Yeah. That's why I told you. The biggest challenge is range. It's range. So maximum range itself is only 1,000 feet. You just imagine the number of towers. If it covers only 1,000 feet, you just consider the big city. What about the number of base towers or towers required to cover all the cell phones? That is the biggest challenge. So with restricted power, you need to design the antenna.
Thank you, sir. I think there are no questions. Yes, sir. Actually, participants asking for PPT, sir. Can we share?
Yeah, definitely. I just send it to you and you can forward it to anyone whoever interested.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir. On behalf of Vidyavardhaka College of Engineering and on behalf of Department of ECE, I thank Dr. Vijay C. Kasabegoda, sir, for accepting our invitation without any second opinion. Sir, the presentation was really interesting and it was more informative and it was helpful for both students as well as research faculty, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Even I thank VVC, especially you and the head of the Department of Electronics and Communication Engineering and the principal and management of your college for inviting me and having such a wonderful session. Thank you very much. Thank you one and all. Even participants also, they very patiently just listen to me and then thank you one and all.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Shall we conclude the meeting?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.